Hey everyone, this is DVK here with your MMA quick hit for the day. Gonna wrap up the main card action at UFC 152. It was a great night of fights. With I really think only one exception. There was one bad fight on the main card, and it was really one that we pretty much saw. I think a lot of people saw coming, and but we'll get right into it. And starting out with of course, the main event: John Jones versus Vitor Belfort. Fight kind of started out how I expected. Jones came, got a takedown, and I was typing onto my Twitter, "Here comes the Belforting," which is a reference to the term a lot of people use for some vicious ground and pound after what Randy Couture did to Vitor years ago. And right before I finished typing that and about to hit send on that, Belfort throws up a arm bar and sinks it in pretty damn deep. It looks like John's got some arm issues and might end up being out of action for a while. But John showed something that a lot of people have questioned, which was how he's going to deal with adversity and being in a tough position, and just his overall toughness. I think that can't be questioned now. His arm was hyperextended. That was a deep armbar from a jiu-jitsu black belt who, I mean, although Vitor's not always the most aggressive guy with his submissions, I mean, this is a guy who's been in MMA and jiu-jitsu for years, and he had that pretty damn deep there. And John fought through it, and then proceeded to do what John does, which is pretty much a systematic beatdown. And then that submission at the end was pretty sweet. An Americana, that it showed itself. John just put it on there and got the technique and finished the fight. It was an impressive finish. Another one for John, and he's going to move forward, even though it might not be as quickly as a lot of us thought. I think right now we're looking, before there were different options based on when John would come back. I thought the Super Bowl fight made a ton of sense, but with this arm injury, who knows if he's going to be ready for that. I think almost certainly now, once they find out how long he's going to be out, we're going to see Machida versus Hendo in the number one contender fight, and then John will fight the winner of that, and it won't really hold up the division just as he recovers. But we'll find out over the next few days. I think really what to expect for how long John's going to be out. Belfort, I mean, what do you say about him? The guy acquitted himself better than anyone really thought. Put on a good performance, but in the end, it was what we expected. John was just too damn good, and really put it on him pretty well. He was cut up, battered, and by the end of the fight, and like I said, no shame in the effort that he put forward. For considering he's been fighting at welterweight, he put on more of a fight than I expected. Other from the main event, Demetrius Johnson. I mean, gosh, that guy's pretty impressive. Takes home the first UFC flyweight title. It was a good fight. I made the comment. I stand by it. I think this was the worst flyweight fight in UFC history, and I only say that because all the other flyweight fights in UFC history have been awesome until this point, and this fight was pretty damn good. On some nights, this could have been a fight of the night candidate. These guys went back and forth, were scrapping. Joe Benavidez got his face marked up pretty good, and you're starting to see the evolution of Demetrius Johnson. This guy is so quick, and his skill and putting it all together is now catching up. This is a guy who you could see fighting or beating the champion for a couple years, but this division's still so fluid right now with new talent coming into the UFC, new talent finding its legs, guys coming down from 135, that nothing really is going to surprise me over the next 2 years in this division, whether Johnson holds the title that whole time or if he comes out next time and loses it. My first thought is that this could be the first of a potential trilogy. Benavidez had him in a bad position at one point. I thought he had the guillotine and he was cranking on the neck a little bit. He just couldn't get his hands connected. It was a very close moment there for Johnson, and the fight was very competitive. It split decision at the end. With Johnson, he won the first round clearly, and in my mind, he won the last 8 minutes clearly. In between, it was very close, a lot of back and forth. Benavidez landing some of the harder shots, and Johnson landing more and getting better positions and stuff. So it was a great fight. Check it out if you haven't already. Um, Down to the third fight, the Bisping Stan fight. That was back and forth. A very good, very good fight where Michael Bisping, of all things, used his wrestling and takedowns to seal the deal on this. Even though it got Stan off balance enough that Bisping's striking also really came to show. He doesn't hit anywhere near as hard as Stan. He really didn't hurt Stan badly, and he got caught with one big right towards the end of the first round. But Bisping was able to use his wrestling, and he exposed the fatal flaw of Brian Stan. I mean, there's no shame for Stan. He got taken down by Phil Davis and Chael Sonnen in two of his UFC losses. I mean, no shame in getting taken down by NCAA champions and All Americans and Olympic caliber or near Olympic caliber wrestlers. But Michael Bisping is not a near Olympic caliber wrestler, and Bisping was able to score, I think, 4 or 5 takedowns in the fight. Really control it, work his position. And I mean, it's a big testament to Bisping. It's a guy who probably didn't know what the word wrestling meant when he came into the UFC. He was not a very good grappler. He was, he could get. It was a liability then. You definitely weren't seeing him shooting takedowns like he is now. And this is a guy who's continued to evolve. In my mind, and I don't think I'm missing anyone right now, but I think he's the best fighter to have never received a UFC title shot. And based on how things work out, if Anderson Silva doesn't get the GSP fight, I think he could end up fighting Michael Bisping. Bisping will jump Chris Weidman because Bisping's a much bigger name. That pay-per-view, Anderson Silva versus Michael Bisping, that does, jeez, that does probably 300,000 more sales than Bisbing or than Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman needs to get out there and continue making his mark. And that's nothing against Chris Weidman. I think he's showing the personality and the talent where he can be a big star down the road. But just UFC totally screwed the pooch by putting his fight with Mark Munoz on Fuel. That should have at worst been an FX fight, and probably been on a pay-per-view, a big pay-per-view fight, and then people would actually know and give a crap about Chris Weidman. And said his biggest exposure was fighting on 8 days' notice, where he cut 30 pounds in actually I think it was 10 days to fight Maya and just gassed terribly in that fight. The fight that doesn't need to be talked about, Hamill Hollett, just not a very good fight. Hamill won, but that's all you gotta say about that. Cub Swanson. I mean, here's a guy he picking it up pretty big now. He was looking good in his fight with Ricardo Lamas, and then Lamas caught a submission and tapped him out. And at that point, I really didn't know what was gonna go on with Cub. I think we kind of figured him out at that point. He's this mediocre mid-level fighter. But since then, he's come out and he's got 3 big KOs in a row. George Roop, Ross Pearson, and now Charles Oliveira. And I mean, to not take Cub Swanson seriously at this point is a big mistake. I mean, a lot of people like me have had a hard time getting the 8 second double flying knee KO out of your head, but I mean, let's he has earned his way back up into the mix. There's a heck of a line developing at 145. UFC, if Jose Aldo can stay healthy, he could have one hell of a year with defense after defense. He's got the Koreans on me, Frankie Edgar, um, Eric Cook, now Ricardo Lamas is in there, and now Cub Swanson is back up there in the mix. And I mean, there's just options lining up there for Jose Aldo to have interesting fights and exciting fights time and time again. And he just needs to stay healthy. That's kind of going to be the big deal moving forward because featherweight is not short on contenders right now. That's my wrap up for the main card of UFC 152. I'll come back and hit up the prelims in a little while, but it was a great night of fights. And I'll talk to you later.